Welcome to the Bible Journey. My name is Mark Green, and I'm the pastor of adult ministries at Otterbein Church. Today, we're finishing up the book of John, and in our next podcast, we're going to introduce the book of Acts. Looking forward to doing that with you. John 18 through 21 walks us again through the final hours of Jesus' life. If you have been a part of the Bible journey now for the last few months, we have walked through the four Gospels and walked through the last days and hours of Jesus' life several times. The trials and the crucifixion and the resurrection are all given in great detail in John's Gospel. And he gives us an experience in chapter 21 that none of the other Gospel writers present. So we're going to hang out there a little bit more today. Let's begin with a story that will lead me to a question. When I was a little boy, my grandmother had a clothesline in her backyard. Now, for you young people, you'll probably know what a clothesline is. A clothesline is simply, they'd stick a couple poles in the ground with a crossbar across, and then they would run a line between them and hang their clothes on them to dry out in the wind. And my grandmother's clothesline consisted of a metal pole, about 6 feet tall, with another metal pole screwed into it at the top. And I was visiting her as a young boy one time, and I looked out at that clothesline, and it begged me to come and climb it. My grandmother had told me, do not climb the clothesline. And of course, when you tell a little boy not to do something, what does a little boy do? He's got to go do it immediately. So I climbed to the top of the clothesline and sat there like it was my throne overlooking my vast kingdom. I was the king of the world for the moment. Well, you can imagine, this probably doesn't end well. I started on the way down and I slipped. And on the way down, my arm right here caught a rusted screw and tore my arm right there. And my grandmother's response was, you got what you deserved. Well, maybe I did, but for a moment I was the king of the world. It was worth it. All that means is I have a scar on my arm that has been there since I was a child. But here's the thing. My arm is completely useful. I can do everything I want with it. It's not hindered me from doing anything. I grew up just fine with it. But I have a scar that tells a story. I would imagine, like me, you have some scars that cannot be seen. Scars on your heart. Some of those scars that I have were my own doing, and some were put there by others. And I would imagine you have some scars on your heart as well. And I also know that left unattended, the scars on our heart will hinder us from experiencing God's full love. It will hinder us from loving Him, and it will limit what God can do in this and do in our life. And so this leads me to a question. Do you have a failure in your past, in your life journey, that is so significant that you feel like it has disrupted your relationship with Christ to the point where that relationship will never be redeemable? Have you blown it so bad and concluded that God is done with you? Well, if that's where you find yourself, or you know somebody who has that attitude, then this story in John chapter 18 through 21 is for you. Because you see, Peter blew it big time. John 18 recounts the story of the arrest of Jesus by the religious leaders. A gang shows up, led by Judas Iscariot, to arrest Jesus, and Peter responds. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. So Jesus said to Peter, put your sword into its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father has given me? So they show up to arrest Jesus. Peter is so angry, he grabs the sword, and apparently he's not very adept with it because he strikes, but all he does is manage to cut off the ear of one of the servants, whose name was Malchus. The other gospel writers tell us Jesus picked up the ear and healed the guy. How cool is that? Apparently, if I'm the servant, I'm going, who in the world is this that he can do that and do it so casually? Jesus is then led to the courtyard of the high priest. All the disciples have scattered when Jesus was arrested, but John and Peter follow at a distance. Because John is known to the high priest, he's allowed into the courtyard while Peter has to remain outside. John, knowing that Peter is out there and knowing that Peter would love to be inside, goes out and speaks to a servant girl who is keeping watch, and he tells her to let Peter in. Listen to the words. As Peter is walking in, the servant girl speaks to Peter. The servant girl at the door said to him, "You also are not one of this man's disciples, are you?" And he said, "I am not." And now the servants and the officers had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing and warming themselves. Peter also was with them, standing and warming himself. It is vital that you take note that there was a charcoal fire and that they were warming themselves there. Peter is going to be questioned 2 more times in the next few minutes, and 2 more times he's going to deny that he knows Jesus. And then we get verse 27. Peter again denied it, and at once a rooster crowed, just like Jesus has said. Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. And now Peter hears that crow. Now, I would imagine that no one listening today has done anything as horrible as what Peter did just then. You may feel like what you've done is terrible, but Peter promised that I will never leave you, Jesus. I will stay with you to the end. I even cut off a servant's ear for you. I am fully in and I am totally on your side. And then he has denied him in a matter of a few minutes 3 times. The other gospel writers tell us that when he hears the rooster crow and realizes what he's done, that Peter's heartbroken. And I can just imagine, with tears streaming down his face, he just leaves the courtyard and thinking to himself, I can't believe what I have just done. You ever said those words? I have. I can't believe what I have just done. Well, the story of what happens next to Jesus is probably, or should be, familiar to us. With all my heart, I beg you and plead with you to read the last hours of Jesus' life somberly, slowly, and meditatively. We've read it 3 times in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but read it again and allow the full weight of that to be on your heart. But for now, I want us to jump ahead to chapter 20. Jesus is risen and begins appearing to many people. Verse 19 says, on the evening of that day, the first day of the week, the doors being locked where the disciples were for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said to them, peace be with you. So imagine that the disciples are huddled together, Peter's there, and Jesus suddenly appears and says, peace. I would imagine that if Peter, what Peter was doing in the moment, imagine with me if you're in that room and you're Peter and Jesus suddenly shows up. How do you think he reacted? I think from what we're going to see, as bold and impetuous as Peter was, I can just imagine Peter sort of quietly moving to the corner of the room, trying to disappear. He is thrilled. There's Jesus. But in seeing Jesus, it brings back all the emotions and all the thoughts of what I have done. And I can just imagine there's a sense of I just want to disappear. But Jesus is not done with Peter. Chapter 21. Peter grabs a couple other disciples and goes fishing. What else you going to do? That's what he knew to do, and it brought him comfort to do something he was familiar with, and maybe something to get his mind off of things. He's still wrestling with, I saw Jesus, I know what I did. So they fish and they don't catch anything when a person on the beach tells them to throw their nets on the other side of the boat. And immediately they catch a large quantity of fish. This isn't the first time this has happened, remember? John figures it out. That person on the beach is Jesus. And this time, Peter can't contain himself. He jumps in the water and swims to shore. When they get there, we read verse 9. When they got on the land, they saw a charcoal fire. There it is again, in place with fish laid on it and bread. Interestingly, the term charcoal is just used 2 times in the Old New Testament. Here on the beach, and earlier when Peter was warming himself before a charcoal fire as he denied Jesus 3 times. I think there's something significant happening here. Jesus invites Peter and the disciples to the fire where they share a meal. And now it is time for Jesus to deal with Peter. It's time to deal with what he had done. And John records one of the most beautiful conversations in the whole Bible. Verses 15 through 17. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And he said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. Then Jesus said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, tend my sheep. He said to him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he had said to him a third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. If you would allow me a few observations, and as we walk through these, think about your struggle. Think about that thing you have done that you think is irredeemable. First, our response when we fail should be to run to Jesus, not away from Jesus. I know. When we fail, the last place we want to go is to Christ, but it is the place we need to go. And when Peter finally realized that, he dove into the water and made with all energy to get to Jesus. Men and women, the response to our failure is not to run from Jesus, but to run to Jesus. Second, moving forward from failure means acknowledging what we have done. No more lies, no more justifications, no more excuses. And in this passage, I love the fact that Jesus did not go through the whole experience with Peter again. Jesus didn't say, okay, Peter, let's rehearse this whole experience. Let's go over it again. Let's talk through again how you denied me and turned your back on me. Let's go through the whole story again, and I'll let you know if you leave anything out. Men and women, Jesus was not after humiliating Peter. And he's not about humiliating us either. He simply invites Peter to a charcoal fire to communicate to Peter why he was there. And I think Jesus and Peter both know we're coming back to that experience by coming to a charcoal fire. Intimacy leads to being vulnerable, and Jesus knows that. But he also knows that when we are vulnerable, our hearts are open to him to change it. Exposing the wound allows Jesus to heal the wound. And by the way, when we are honest with God, expect God to be honest with you. Well, third, Jesus doesn't give up on us. Therefore, our failure does not determine our future. Did you notice that each time Jesus called Peter Simon, son of John, each time? He didn't call him Peter. Remember, his name originally was Simon, and Jesus quickly, after coming to him, changed his name to Peter. But on the beach, I believe Jesus is saying, Peter, I don't want you to live in the past. And I don't want you to live back there. I want you to allow me to heal the present. And so he refers to him as his name before he met Jesus in order to bring Peter into the relationship he has with Jesus. Peter, your failure is not your future. I redeemed you. I changed your name. I still have a plan for you. I still have a work that I need you to do, and I need you to believe that as well. Jesus responds the same way to our failure. He still loves us. He still believes in what he's doing in our lives. He still has a plan and a work he wants to do. Fourth, Jesus provokes Peter to renew his desire and love for him. And now we come to the issue of love. Here's what I think is happening here. Jesus focuses on Peter's love for him, not his love for Peter. This is not a question of, Peter, do I still love you? Of course, Jesus says, I still love you. What I've got to get out of you is the fact that you love me back. And Peter is broken, and he's perhaps wondering if there's still room in the life of Christ for him. Does he still have a purpose? And I love these questions because they're love questions. Jesus doesn't ask Peter, hey, are you sorry for what you did? Peter, will you promise to try harder in the future? He asked Peter a relationship question. Do you love me? And I think Jesus goes to love because he knows Peter is broken. At this point, Jesus is not concerned with his brokenness over his failure, but his doubt and his fear that his failure has disqualified him from communion with Christ and from being able to do great things for Christ. By the way, you're going to read in the book of Acts, Peter is astounding what he's doing for Christ. If that wound doesn't close, Peter will berate himself for the rest of his life, and that poison will work its way through its life. Same is true for us. So Jesus presses Peter on his love. And Peter's heart and passion begin to stir. I love this. Twice Jesus asked Peter if he loved him, and Peter twice says that he does. Then Jesus says a third time, "Do you love me?" And Peter responds with force and with energy. Peter was stunned by Christ's words. He says, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And I could just imagine a big grin coming over Jesus' face. And he's going, "There is the fire that you have always demonstrated, Peter. There is the passion that caused you to walk on water. There is the loyalty that has led to you to do bold things. There's the commitment. Peter, I know that you love me." Not in some superficial, feel-better way, but with a passionate, fiery love that is going to lead you to do incredible things. And Jesus had to pull that out of Peter again and help Peter to become who God intended him to be. And in the hands of God, that's what he does. Men and women, he'll do the same thing for you. So as you read the story of Peter and Jesus in chapters 18 through 21, I hope that it will give you great encouragement that you have done nothing so bad or so terrible that Jesus cannot heal it, and then cause that healing to become great things in your life. Hope you'll have great joy as you read the Bible this week.